Hi guys, welcome back to my channel about fashion industry. My name is Irina. I live in Los Angeles and I work as a technical designer. In my previous video, I was talking about pre-production phase of technical design, and today I will talk about production phase. This is time when wholesale orders are placed and we are going to prepare the styles for production. If a style is a repeat style or carryover style, which means that it was produced before, you can skip fit sample stage and go straight to pre-production sample. Because you already produced it before, and if you worked on that sample before, it means you already perfected the fit and you don't need to work on it again. Unless the fit was not perfect, you can still improve it. But if the style is absolutely new and the fit is not great, you definitely need to see another sample, a fit sample, where you're going to perfect the fit and the balance of the sample. So the fit sample usually comes in substitute fabric, and it's usually fabric of the same quality of the production, and also the fit sample can be in available color. It doesn't necessarily has to be the same color as production, because right now we're only looking at the fit. So when you receive that first fit sample, it's very important to measure all points of measurements of the sample. I know that some technical designers, they don't like measuring and they can go to the fitting without measuring the sample. But I think it's very important for technical designer himself to measure the sample for a couple of reasons. First, you have to check if the factory is following your corrections, if the factory is following your measurements. And the second is when you lay the sample flat on the table, when you measure it, you're going to notice a lot of things like the shape of the pattern, like the shape of the armhole, slope of the pattern, and also you can even notice the balance problems. If the sample is not lying flat on the table, and if it's torquing, there could be a couple of problems, the balance problems. It could be that the fabric is torquing. So when you go to the fitting, you already know in advance what the problems are. But if you don't measure the sample and you go to the fitting and you see that the balance is off, something is not right. Even all the measurements could be correct, but the sample is not sitting properly on the body, and it's going to be a guessing game what is wrong with the sample. So it's very important to analyze the sample before the fitting. You also can notice the workmanship issues when you measure the sample, because during the fitting you're not going to be looking at the sample very up close, and also the model is not going to tell you the problem with the workmanship. So it's good to investigate it before you go to the fitting. Sometimes it's helpful to bring previous samples to the fit room for the fitting. The previous samples would be protos or SMS for comparison. And also before you start evaluating the fit during the fitting, you read out loud what corrections were made to the style before, and also you read all the measurements that are out of tolerance. At fit stage, minimal design changes can be made because the product was already purchased by buyers, and if we change designs or details, we have to notify salespeople and buyers about the changes. So during the fit sample stage, we look at comfort, functionality, proportions, balance, range of motions of the sample. I will give you an example. For example, one time I went to a store and I tried on leather pants and I couldn't get my foot through the leg opening. I'm not even talking about buying that style. I couldn't even try it on. So it means that for some reason when they were making it, they didn't think of putting a zipper on a leg opening or increasing the leg opening circumference to make the pant functional. So nobody is going to buy that pant now. For comfort and range of motion, we ask model to raise her arms as if she's driving a car and see if it's not too tight in the back. Also, we'll ask her to sit down and see if it's comfortable to sit and not too tight. So when you put that sample on a dress form, it's not gonna give you that feedback. But the model, because she moves, she can bend and tell you if it's too tight or if it's not comfortable on her skin. At fit stage, we also can adjust some proportions of the garment, like the length of the bodice or the length of the bottom. At this stage, it's still possible to work on that. At fit stage, we're also starting to work on the balance of the garment if it's not good. So balance means that all horizontal lines, seam lines like shoulders, bust, waist, hips, and hem, they're parallel to the floor. And also vertical lines like side seam, center front seam, and center back seam, they're perpendicular to the floor. A good balanced sample should hang very straight and properly on the body. Usually if the balance is off, the sample, like you will see them side seams, they will be not perpendicular to the floor and they will be like swinging back or forward, or the shoulders will be falling back. And there are a couple of reasons why this happens. Well, first, when you measure that sample and you lay it flat on the table, you can see if the sample is not laying flat and already torquing, it could be that the pattern seams are not aligned, and that's something that pattern maker have to work on it. Also, if the fabric is torquing and not hanging on a straight grain, it can distort the fabric and the balance of the garment. Sometimes the back neck is too shallow and you need to scoop it more so it sits properly on the shoulders. Or for example, if the sample has zero shoulder forward, you know, in human body the shoulders are a little bit forward because we're a little bit stooping. We have more flesh on the back of the neck than in the front, so you need that scooped back, and you also need a shoulder to be a little bit forward, like ½ inch, in order to properly sit on the body. Sometimes shoulder or sleeve point can be too backwards, and you need to see if you move the shoulder point forward, if it also will help with that proper balance. I would like to mention how it is important to have an established block pattern library. So basic block is a pattern that is a very basic shape, and it has a very good established fit and balance. Every time when your pattern maker starts a new pattern for a new style, they can use that block for shape and measurements. And because it already has a very good fit and balance, all your samples are going to have a good fit and balance, and you don't need to see so many fit iterations and request multiple fit samples to improve it. So I would recommend to invest your time developing that block library. It will save you so much money, headache, and time in the long run, because all your line is going to look perfect at the proto stage. And before you finish the fitting, you need to recap what corrections you're going to do to the sample, and also what next sample are you going to request. Are you going to request pre-production sample, or you're going to see another fit sample? If the balance of the garment is not good, I would recommend to see another sample before you proceed to pre-production, because the balance is a very tricky thing and it might require a few iterations. And the next PP sample or pre-production sample is going to be made in actual fabric and actual production trims, and also it's supposed to be made in an actual production factory, and it's going to represent the production. At PP sample stage, I don't recommend to do any big fit corrections because the factory is going to start cutting and producing the styles. If you still need to improve the fit or balance, you have to request second PP sample, and that actually can delay the whole production process and your delivery dates. So ideally by PP sample, your fit and balance should be perfect. You need to approve PP sample at least 4 weeks before the shipping date, because the factory needs at least 1 month to cut the fabric and manufacture the style. And also, after you approve PP sample, you need to release graded spec. And the next samples that you're going to receive are called TOP samples, which stands for top of production samples. So they represent the first production line of the factory, which means it's the first samples that the factory just did and they sent it to you early in the production process. You request TOP sample just to quickly cross-check if your top of production sample meets specifications that were approved at PP sample stage. And you still might have a little bit time to catch that error and tell the factory, hey, like something is wrong, the sample doesn't look like PP. And at this stage, the fit is almost impossible to change. Maybe some slight corrections you can work with the factory, but you can catch some workmanship problems with the sample, and you can work with the factories about it. You need to request TOP samples in all colorways and also with correct tags, care labels, brand labels, packaging, because TOP sample should represent the shipment sample that's going to the customer. So that was the whole process of technical design, starting from the initial spec development and to the shipping to the customer. So if you learned anything new today, please give me a thumb up. If you want more information about fashion industry and manufacturing, please subscribe, because I will make more videos in the nearest future. And you have a good day, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.